good? All right. Welcome to the July 24th, 2023 meeting. The first order of business is to approve the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? All right. Next is the approval of minutes from the June 26, 2023 meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
All right. Board members, I wanted to recognize one of our students, graduates actually, who's already gone to school. Alex Lee, the summer was recognized as Gatorade's Alabama Boys and Track and Field Player of the Year. And I really just think it's so important to make this recognition for the reasons that he really typifies what a lot of our students, I think, are in our system. And the Gatorade Player of the Year really is not based on just athletics, but it's athletic excellence, it's academic achievement, and it's exemplary character. And I really don't know how to sum up better what we want to provide and what we want our students to be able to do is to focus on academics, to do the extracurriculars they want to do, to have exemplary character. And Alex has been awarded something that we've had in the past with some of our athletes, but it really is just the well-rounded student. And I thought it would be a great way to start a meeting heading into New Year's. This really is what we're all about. So Alex is not able to be with us. His parents couldn't be with us as well, but I wanted to make sure to recognize him formally from the board's perspective and really just models what we're going to see in our students. So congratulations, Alex. I believe it's North Carolina. I believe I'm right about that. University of North Carolina.
I think the article said Virginia.
Virginia.
Okay, got it.
Okay. University of Virginia.
Be careful getting.
That's right. UCC over there. All right, fantastic. Okay, financial statements up next, board members. Courtney.
Good afternoon, board members. I provided the June 2023 financial statement. As of June 30, 2023, we have 102.5% of our budgeted ad valorem tax revenues compared to the 95.8% that we had received last year. Our total expenditures and transfers out in the general fund as of June 30 was 80.6% of the budget compared to 79% last year. All things being equal, we should be at 75% of our budget in the 9th month of the fiscal year. We're a little above that mark due to some payments for large one-time expenditures. Our monthly financial statements and check registers are available for viewing on our website upon board approval, and all bank accounts have been reconciled as of June 30, 2023.
Thank you. Board members, I recommend approval of the financial statement for 23.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation to approve the financial statement for June 2023. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions, comments?
On track for finishing on the expenditure side about where we're projecting. Courtney.
Probably a little higher than what we thought.
Any particular factors that may affect that?
Just, inflation, rising utility costs, operational costs.
Right, and we do start a new salary schedule in July, so for the 3 months heading into, we pick up that additional amount that wasn't originally part of the budget. So one of those impacts that those increases will have when we start payments in July, but fiscal year doesn't start until October. So, thank you.
All in favor?
Okay, under business, I recommend the board approve the correction made to the contract date for administrative services and support.
The superintendent's recommendation to the contract for administrative support services. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Board members, this is Mr. Roger Dobbycar's contract, and we had July 1st on it, but when you retire, you've got to take a month off in the retirement system. So he's correcting it to August 1st.
All in favor?
Item B, I recommend the board approve the owner-architect amendment for Vestavia Hills High School track improvements.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation to approve the amendment for the Vestavia Hills High School track improvements. We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We've had the track down for a little bit of time now. This is really just wrapping the contract up. It's a positive for us, of course, and you get a little bit of money back, but this is just the last amendment to that contract.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Item C, I recommend the board approve the licensing agreement with Courtney Bradley.
Heard the superintendent's recommendation to approve the licensing agreement with Courtney Bradley. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We'll pitch to Whit on this one. Any comments you'll make on this one?
All of our licensing agreements for the use of the branding and trademarks of the school system up to this point have been with businesses in the Vestavia community, established LLCs. Courtney is an individual resident of Vestavia Hills who is planning to open a business selling branded items for the school system. So this is a little different, but the provisions within the agreement are the same as they would be for any of the other licensees.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next several items, board members are information only, so not a vote of action taken, but want to make sure you're aware of them. The first is item D, breakfast and lunch prices for 2023 and 24. It has been several years since we have increased prices for students, and that will continue to be the case this year. We do not have impacts for the need to increase pricing for breakfast or lunch for students. That's a good thing. We are increasing for adults, and we'll make sure all our staff is aware of that. We'll get that information to you. That's the only adjustment in it, and that was really a required change to the child nutrition program that we had to make. Item D is the school fee schedule for 23 and 24, and you have a list of the elementary fees and secondary fees, and we bring these to you this time every year because the fee portal is going to open, and it opens Thursday of this week. And so before that gets out, we'd like to make sure you get it and vet through any questions or conversation points that you would like to have. Fee schedules are always important because it functions in so many ways to do things for us we're not otherwise be able to do. But I just want to make some general comments. The elementary schedules, the fees for curriculum and supplies are the same amount. You'll see those across the board, and we've stated that number. Well, we decreased last year, if I remember right. We've held that number again this year. We made one deletion from that overall amount at the top, and it's for a $25 fee for K-4 students for Chromebooks. So this year, the decision has been made by our leadership in the audience here that we would keep Chromebooks K-4 at school. And because of that, we don't need students to pay for a $25 maintenance fee on those. So that comes off the K-4 schedules. The other parts of the elementary schedules are field trips. And you can see various and sundry different field trips on there. And there are some differences, as you have noted, and looked at it in terms of the pricing and the trips that they take. And I've had a couple of you ask me questions about it, so I thought it'd be a useful time to talk through it since our principals are with us, what those differences are about, both in the fee amounts and both in the field trips as well. So kind of just turn it over to you guys for those.
Yeah, I noticed in one of the questions, one of the fees that some of our fifth graders are going to the Space and Rocket Center and some of them are not. And I'd be interested in knowing how that decision is made, whether, what's the benefit of having differences in terms of what seems to be Space and Rocket Center, pretty easy to see how that would fit in our curriculum. It looks like 3 of our elementary schools go to the Space and Rocket Center and 2 go to 4-H. And just interested a little bit in how those decisions are made about which field trips and how those fit into the curriculum for our fifth graders.
I'll speak to Cabo Heights is one of the groups go to the Alabama 4-H Center. So my fifth grade team, so we lost Camp McDowell. They'd gone to Camp McDowell for years and years. When we went to school there, it was like for a week, and now, and then it became shorter and shorter, and then the day trip. Camp McDowell made it pretty clear that they didn't want to continue working with us for a day trip. And so we were sort of all left to find a replacement for that. My fifth grade team wanted to replace that with another nature-like trip to as closely resemble what they could do at McDowell as possible. So they went and researched that and found the 4-H Center and felt like that would work best for us.
Just for the parents who may be tuning in or may look at this later, can you tell them a little bit about what the 4-H center is?
So the experience will be very similar to McDowell. There'll be speakers for them on the animal and the science parts of that. There's kayaking, which they had at McDowell. There's some teamwork, group work element as they had at McDowell, so part of the character aspect for us.
And as far as a group going to Huntsville in the spring, since we can't do the day trip to McDowell, we had looked at other farms, but then this year, our fourth grade wanted to go to Jones Farm. Jones Valley Farming. So they're saying if fourth grade's doing that this year, then next year they won't need that. So they went ahead and, I know East went to the Rocket Center last year. Children loved it, parents loved it. And so our fifth grade teachers wanted to do that as the big trip. And there was a McDowell-like camp we looked at. It's like 2.5 hours away for a day trip. That's a lot of riding on the bus and starting early and finishing late.
Yeah, and at Dolly Ridge, I could tell they weren't really happy with their options for environmental camps, so I said I would run it for them, which I'm not doing that for the rest of y'all, but I'll do it for Dolly Ridge. But I love the outdoors, and I already have like a little outdoor club, and we have a big, like it's 27-acre campus with a lot of wood, so we've got a lot of dads who love the outdoors, so we're gonna do something kind of in-house, which that'll be fun.
So we're gonna sum it.
Yeah, come on over.
This problem started when Liberty Park was formed, back when we were one fifth grade place, and they wanted to go to Sea Lab and others wanted to go to Cam McDowell. And so that's always been that's when, teachers have their passions. Sometimes it's just one personality on the team that's really strong and they convince the others on the team, this is where we need to go. They go, they have a great experience. And then the parents buy in, and that's how these differences changed. I remember back then we had our own textbook series as well, and we were very site-based. So that's always a bit of a challenge. If you want to all be on the same page and then convincing your folks, we're going to do it just like this other school. But we try to be comparable, and I think we're trying to be more comparable than we've been for many years, in fact.
Thematically though, K-5, what are kids gonna experience, even though they may go to different places across the band of all of elementary schools? What are the things they're gonna get?
Well, they have to hit the standards or we don't let them go. So it's standards based. It's usually science, but there's always, American Village is a lot of social studies like the American Revolution. And you'll see that several grade levels go to American Village, but you need to realize that the program in second grade is totally different than the third grade program than the fifth grade program. Like fifth grade is all about the American Revolution. The younger ones never even see any of that. So it's one of the best field trips for the money to be in close proximity that our kids could go for the history aspect. But so it's science and social studies standards based on grade level.
And can I say too, Mr. Brown, that thinking about like, especially from my point of view, like last year I had 49 fifth graders. Well, if we're trying to get a charter bus to Space and Rocket Center, which we would have to, because we'd have to leave earlier and stay later than a school bus could take us. And we wouldn't even have filled up a charter bus. That's cost has got to be spread out among 49 kids versus 170, for other schools. So, our fifth grade team was very concentrated on that aspect quite a bit, even though my fifth grade class this coming year is a little larger, the one behind it is not. And so they're trying to look ahead for the next couple of years so that it's the most fiscally responsible choice we can make for our kids.
And I very much appreciate that fiscal responsibility. I'm going to have a couple questions from Ms. Rozelle about that fiscal responsibility as it relates to the high school fees, because I know that's been a point of emphasis over the last 2 or 3 years to try to keep all of these fees at a level that's consistent with what we're doing as a public school. And I know our system does a great job for parents who may want their children to go to the Space and Rocket Center or to 4-H and frankly find the $95 or the $100 to be a little bit much. That there's opportunities for them we've got resources available for folks who need that, so that all of our kids able to partake in these trips that we think are important to the curriculum. So, and I would just simply say in terms of if we have one school that, where students, maybe the size of that particular class, that would be a great opportunity to coordinate with the other schools so that you have, maybe, one bus or two buses that can take both Liberty Park and Cava Heights or Dolly Ridge and Cava Heights, so that if our teachers think that Space and Rocket Center is the best option, that we figure out a way to do that. But if they think it's 4-H, then that's great too. So I appreciate all of the cooperation that goes with that. The other thing I noticed on the fees is that we've got lots of classes that have fees, particularly in the high school level. And I've also seen some of the backup for that. And so rather than me read through that, Ms. Rizzo, could you just tell generally so that parents know when they get these fees, like, why do we have them? What's, is it extra copies? If it's a particular software that our students need? And just, not for every class, but just give an idea of, if I'm a parent and I see, okay, you signed up for this class, but now I'm being asked to pay $20 for it, or $10 for it, or $35 for it, kind of the process that goes into setting that fee schedule.
So we cut fees back a couple ago. COVID happened and companies almost every single company or vendor that we use have increased their prices of, especially science supplies and art supplies, have almost tripled. So because we did not increase fees the last year and the year before that, there is not a surplus of money in these accounts. The money that parents pay, the fees that parents pay are used in that school year. So there's not just this excess. So I had teachers who were requesting a fee increase. They had to submit that and they had to supply a justification for it. In other words, I'm asking for an increase in this fee and here's why. So if a parent wants to ask or call the school, our bookkeepers, that's usually where the call is routed, can say, the teachers have this, this, and this for this course, and these are the prices. Nobody's profiting. We are basically increasing fees to cover our costs. And last year, there were some accounts that we did not, because we did not ask enough of our students in the fee, we had to figure out a way to get that paid. So unfortunately, it is what is going on in the exterior world outside of school and out of our control, just the cost of doing business. Some of these things are, especially in our AP courses, there are workbooks that is not College Board. They're also not part of a state curriculum, adoption, thank you. So I think, as I share with Dr. Freeman, our AP scores, the proof is in our AP scores. They were the best this year than they have ever been in over a 5 to 6 year period. So I do believe that what our teachers are doing, and if they're asking for a $25 AP workbook, it is being put to excellent use. And I have data to prove that. So it really, what you're seeing is cost of supply and demand and things like that. And we try to be extremely conscious of that. But, everything has increased. And even people, field trips, when they say they don't want to do business if you're not going to come for more than 24 hours. So they make it impossible for you to do some of the things that we've done in the past for their own reasons. And I don't know if I've answered your question, but in the gist, that's the reason.
You have, and I just think as we get closer to the school year, it's hard to lose some of them. So as a time, everybody's aware of inflation and people are very aware of cost. It's good for our parents and things that people are looking at these fees. And these fees are being charged because they're necessary for the curriculum that's being taught, whether it's a workbook or whether some classes require color printing as opposed to black and white printing or art supplies, that all these things are actually necessary. And that there is a process that goes through so that it's not just one person saying, I need this, it's someone saying, I need this, and being able to justify it to the administration. So, and I know that we have, over the last 2 or 3 years, really looked at those fee schedules to try to make this as painless as possible as we try to provide the education without limits that we want to provide to our students. We appreciate y'all looking at that and trying to minimize those fees where we can.
And I mentioned to Mr. Brown earlier, board members, that there's been some additional work on trying to create some more parameters around field trips, and that is still an evolving process for us, but I think good work has been done this summer to more define and make that prescriptive to standards and what we're doing. So if we're going to invest dollars and ask parents to pay, that there's really good rationale for doing it. I will note that our fees really across middle school, I think, generally stayed the same. We are not charging, there's a processing fee that comes with a lot of these transactions online. We've really just continued to absorb that. So we're trying to do everything we can to hold fees where they are. There are a couple of things I would note that I don't think necessarily show up on the fee schedule, but one is that in athletics, there are all season passes, and K through 12 can get these. So I believe middle school and up is $100, K-5 I believe is $60. And I don't know if we advertise it or not, but that's something I think we need to make sure parents are aware of, is $60 you can go through a football season without spending that. So it's a really good deal. That's one thing. The other thing is in secondary, this may show up on advanced placement, but students already pay fees for the course. They have in years past not paid fees for testing. And the district has paid for those. And as you know, one of our agenda items this year has been trying to find ways to build our reserve and manage the finances that our public has told us we needed to do. And so one of the things that is added this year are test fees for advanced placement courses. And there'll be some information going out, I believe, tomorrow to parents about that. And I just want to make sure you are aware of it as well.
So if the family struggles, is the place they go, the Rebels Helping Rebels, is that the best place for them to submit?
So it really depends on what area it's in. So for example, if it is a field trip, if it's the cost of certain supplies, or say a band uniform, Rebels Helping Rebels would be the area or the place that we would direct these families. Our counselors are wonderful at being able to take a request or a need, and we have resources. We work also very closely with Ms. Bailey to find the best resource for that. Now, as far as the AP, the College Board fee that they assess us, if that need arises in a partnership with our counselors, if a family has filled out the correct paperwork for certain needs, we have documented, and there is there's a fee decrease. So we will make it possible if a student wants to take an AP exam, but there's a financial need, we will find a way. And College Board offers different options that districts have in order to pay those college AP test fees. So it's kind of Rebels Helping Rebels, these services, and these different partners that we have in our community who help us as well.
The elementary level, it's a lot PTO too. I know my PTO has budgeted in for help for field trips for students who can't afford them. So they do that each year, and they have that fund. So the PTOs are incredibly helpful with that.
At the elementary level, no child misses if they can't afford it. I mean, they get to go. We've never left a child behind on a field trip.
Courtney, for those who would be interested in seeing it on the budget, so would you just briefly kind of describe where all these fees are going to be, they live in our budget?
Yeah, all the fees that we're discussing now are in the special revenue fund because those are local school activities. So those are in the special revenue fund, not in the general fund.
What line item might they see them?
It would be, it would be local funds.
Okay, in the local funds on the revenue side.
Yes.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you, President. All right, item F is something I just wanted you to be aware of because you're the policy-making body in this school system. You have many policies that call for the authorization or implementation of procedures. And while you don't vote on those procedures, I just really thought it would be helpful to know that we have procedures related to board policy, and there's a lot of them. And Dr. Rainey's team, I believe Ms. Bailey, Dr. Cooper especially, were involved in putting this, everybody's putting this whole picture together. It's been working on it for quite a while. but we wanted to create more of a systemic process. This is an internal document we have that's a live binder that changes as we need it to. But we can show you just one example of what we're talking about when we say there's procedures that dive down into a policy. I believe under health services is one. Is that what we were talking about?
It was, and I have lost where it is here on the list. There it is. Food health services.
Yeah, so we can get,
Kind of give you a sense here, just basically start seeing policy, but then also how we deal with that policy internally.
and a number of these have attachments that show some specific procedures. Jennifer, you may have one that comes to mind that jumps out.
Trying to read it. I know on the, what if you go maybe to, Jason Flat, that's 6.25, right there.
Mhm.
Uh-huh. There's an attachment here, which is part of our mandated training across the district. So what we tried to do when I formatted it was have the policy on one side and to the right, any document that went along with that, and the personnel part, if there's a document for a grievance, for example, that an employee would have to file, then that document is right there. So if one of the principals had to call Meredith and ask about that, that's easily accessible to them. So we tried to have everything with the policy to the left and any additional documentation related to procedures on the right.
Really good work, team, putting that together. It's just trying to align policy, procedure, goals, and all of those things that are important to our work together. And I want to make sure you are aware of it.
Who all has access to my file?
It's all the internal administrative team. Yeah, you're certainly welcome to it. It's just enactment of procedures. A lot of this lives on our website anyway. That would be relevant to what parents or students would need. So it's really no secrets at all in it. It's just a working document we have to make sure policies be complied with. So really good work. Thank you, guys. Last thing is that the State Department every year collects data on discipline in the system, and that is a required report we make to the board each year. And so providing that to you in the form of what's called a student incident report. And the student incident report will only list for you the disciplinary actions that resulted in a placement to in-school suspension, alternative school, or out-of-school suspension or expulsion. So not every discipline action that you'll find in a system lands on this report. It's only those that change their place in the first year. So it just gives you a general look at it. And I do think there's been great efforts. Ms. Bailey's worked with principals the last few years and assistant principals, I think, to get this aligned more comprehensively and to make sure the reporting is accurate. And so it's really a good job. And I will tell you that those numbers look really good across the system when you consider the number of kids and days we have. It's helpful to us to know, but it's a report that you're required to have. And you can idea really where most of our time is spent as it relates to discipline. This is pretty consistent. Okay, I'm going to move us on to personnel. Item 7, I recommend the board approve the personnel actions as submitted.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation to approve the following personnel items. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Uh,
Okay, thank you.
I would like to bring attention to one, just the retirement of one Larry Gibson,
Yeah.
dog teacher.
Yeah,
I bring this to the attention of everyone to say, I think it's the last teacher or administrator that was here, Mr. Boone was here. But while class of 91 was going through here, so,
wow.
I had it.
you had him, I mean, he's been there for a long time. And I just want to say thank you. I haven't
He
seen him in
painted the
years.
mural at
He
Pizzazz in the
painted the
gym,
mural.
which is amazing.
One of the coolest things in school, I remember in 8th grade, we got to paint the ceiling tiles and anyway, Dr. Hunsberger can speak to it as well, but he's a gem. We're going into retirement. Hope he has a great retirement, but,
Almost everyone I interviewed had interned with Larry Gibson. So that's why they're like, oh, we know him well.
Yeah.
But last year, he was chosen as like a Teacher of the Year with Alexander Shannara, and his face was on a billboard. So I'm like, that's a way to go, Larry. Just finish strong with your face on a billboard. So that was like his last year. He got that, so that's exciting. But he was an excellent art teacher, and so loved by many. So.
That's great. We welcome 40 new teachers today in our new teacher orientation. I believe it's 40, maybe just have to strategic plan goals update. And I think it goes without saying, and I hope that you know this, our community and parents know it, certainly it's in the DNA of our system that we drive our decisions through our mission and through our beliefs and through our goals. And so I just think it's always an appropriate thing to remind each other as we head into the new year that our work is to ensure every student learns without limits. And we think there are 5 pillars in which we do that our system focuses on: the safe environment, the courage to be creative, unparalleled community support, appreciation of diversity and multiple paths to a bold future. This is where it starts. This is our North Star, as we say. It's a place we go, and there's difficulty with things that occur in systems, and despite setbacks or disappointments or whatever the case may be, we're always on this mission, and that's where we start. So decisions that we make and things that we bring to you this year really through this lens. I think it's also important to acknowledge that we've got a lot of statements up here that we constitute as our beliefs. What we say as a system is important to us, and I think that as you look through there, you will find that there is much emphasis on the value of every person, every child, every employee. We think it's important. That respecting the identity and value of all of our people is very important, and we make that a part of our belief statement. I mean, I think that when you see statements like this, it really typifies our community. Faith is vital to one's life. We think that community service is a civic duty. You just can feel the essence, really, of what is meaningful to our school system. So as we give reports, you'll hear one in a few minutes. Everything is driven through this, that we want all of our folks to feel safe and valued and respected. And so I look forward to sharing a lot of reports with you this year, and you'll feel that thread, I believe. These are our 3 goals. We really make it very simple. And we think our goals should be those that are agile, that can move as need be. And when we wrote this plan in 2019, I'm sure, well, we proved it in the summer of 2019, and I know within a few months we didn't realize the complexity of what school would look like the following year in 2020 and 21. So we didn't write these with them in mind, but we were still able to stay focused on them. The fact is, our first goal is what I would just say is playing offense. This is what we do to provide the learning opportunities for our students and children, and that we meet the expectations of our parents and community when we do it. The second goal I would refer to as the defense, and you're going to hear a report on the defense some tonight. This is the work we do to make sure we confront challenges and problems that our students face, that we acknowledge as parents and community and staff that are important issues. You think about it, goal 1's about learning, goal 2 is about limits. And the third goal is what we do as a system. What do we do in leadership, and what we do with our employees, and in the systems that we have in place to make sure goals 1 and 2 can be successful. And much of your work, board members, lies in goal 3. It's the policy making, it's decisions that are made at this table that enable us to do the first 2 goals. I want to just share with you a few details inside those goals, just so you know these are things that we are, they're emphasis points to us. It's all important, but we've been talking a great deal about STEM over the past year, and spent a lot of time in it last year, and we're continuing to move forward with how we make STEM and it's the thought processes of the habits of mind in STEM important to the work we do K through 12. And we're doing the same thing as it relates to assessment and grading. Response to intervention, and that's what we do for children who need additional support academically and behaviorally. Those are emphasis points to us, and you see it again, field trips. We're still talking about it. It's relative to our conversations because we think it's an important part of the whole experience, but we want it to be done well. Our goal 2 emphasis points are safety and security. You'll hear that in just a few moments. Character and core values always rise to the very top, and just how we generally support our students. The third goal is a continuation of what we've been doing since we've been talking about this strategic plan and how we focus on leadership development, not only at the leadership level, but at the teacher level and all throughout our system. Professional learning communities is where team is important, and our schools are immersed into this work where we find value in working together, and our principals have made this a priority in their buildings. We want to keep doing it better. Fees and fundraising, that's a conversation we continue to have. We made some good strides this year, but it's still part of an emphasis point to us. And the last part I've noted is financial planning for academic programs and facilities. Next month, we'll have our first budget hearing, and you'll begin to hear some of that play out in response to the direction we now must take as a school system, and that requires a lot of creative, innovative thinking to do what we need to do, while at the same time taking care of our students and taking care of our staff. And so those are important variables that we'll be talking about this year. You'll hear a good bit from me on. And I want to conclude with just how we do this at the district level. We support our schools, and this is an organizational chart. I just wanted you to see what it looks like. On the left side is really the curriculum instruction, teaching and learning house. And on the right side is the operations and services, and that's how we support the teaching and learning side. We made one adjustment to this year, in that we did not fill an assistant superintendent position. We had two, now we have one. Meredith Hanson has moved into the executive director of personnel role. She's the director of personnel. We just had executive onto it, which means she'll be doing some additional duties within that department and work with Dr. Rainey, coordinating teaching and learning. That's the main change on the edge, just to let you know how we're working to streamline what we do here and pick up areas that we've not previously done, just to make sure all the work gets done. Courtney's taken on some of the responsibilities of the former assistant superintendent position. I've taken on some, Dr. Rainey's taken on some, just to fill those voids. All right, last thing I want to mention is something that you're going to hear from me a good bit this year. You'll hear it at the chamber meeting. You'll hear it during the course of our chamber newsletters this year and throughout just the conversations we have. But I highlighted for you in our first two goals that one of the important binding factors of what we do in our strategic plan is community. So if we have to think differently, inventively, creatively to do the things we want to do, because our vision is no different than it was before May 9th, we have to do that with the community. And it requires that type of support and a different level of support in thinking than we've had in the past. So I'll conclude with that. It's to be shared more later with you. So one of the most important things, if not, it really is the most important thing we do, is to make sure that we are putting all our efforts into the safety and security of our campuses. I mean, that is fundamental to everything we do. And we believe that, and believe that to be the case. One of the duties that we moved from the assistant superintendent position was safety, security, and Tom Callahan has taken that role on. And Tom is, as you know, been assistant principal for a number of years in the district. He served as a district leader for the last several years and does a various amount of things, but certainly has a big background in this area. And he has been working with Ms. Bailey and some comments that they're going to make tonight. And I'll allow you to introduce our partners who are with us, who are a really important part of this work as well, Tom. So, all right, thank you.
So the genesis of this was, I believe, over spring break. I got a call from Dr. Freeman saying, I need you to pick up safety and security with the departure of Dr. Martin to Trustville. And I said, yes, sir, boss, let's go. And the next day we were in the office at the police department with Captain Ware, and Shane and I go way back. Shane Ware, because he was our SRO at Fazit's years ago, and he's a very visible member of our community, and it's great that he has an SRO background too. So since then, I've met with Chief Farrell from the fire department. He's a parent here as well, and we talked about safety and drills, and talked about the central campus, which we still have for training, and talked about access for the fire department to get into our buildings. So it is a big item. So
Yeah.
I can click, right? There's a picture of Virgil Cannell. So he's the SRO at the freshman center. He's also a Vestavia parent, and we have 13 SROs now. We had 12 for a long time, and I think if you ask your kid, who's your SRO? And they'll say, oh, Officer Jerry Thomas, Officer Jerry, I see him every day, he's very visible. We're so blessed to have an SRO team. They are seasoned police officers, they've worked everywhere. They've done the difficult jobs in policing. And we just added our 13th SRO, and her name is Allie Miller, and she's a 25-plus year veteran of policing, and she's going to act as an interventionist as well, so at all the schools. And she's come to us through Compact 2020 partnership with Shelby County as well, and she will work very closely with Anna Gaston, our social worker, and Jennifer Bailey from Student Services. So we're very blessed to have her. So I will meet with the SROs 3 times a year, 5:30 in the morning, with biscuits and coffee, and we'll talk about anything we need to talk about. So my communication with the administrators at the schools is talking about drills and safety protocols. So explain to them it's the same as last year. They give me their list of all their drills, safety plans, discussions. They have discussions with students and staff. And now I've just been made the technical point of contact for Inside, that's the platform for the school safety in Alabama. So we'll be updating that this week because we've got a few new administrators here as well. So, and then Inside is updated annually. So this past week with Dr. Freeman and Tony Ballou from maintenance, IT department, and principals, and myself, we were walking all the schools and looking at things like cameras and doors and fire alarms and any concerns the administrators have, maintenance and cleanliness too, because that's part of the picture as well. Which brings us to policy 4.1, safety and security. Here's an example of all our safety trainings. And then the additional stuff. And I think all the Stop the Bleed training, that is an annual. And all of our staff are trained on that as well.
Tom, can we go back one slide, please?
Yes, sir.
Get one more. So I do think it's important just to pause here for a minute because this is a piece that there are statutes in place, there are state board requirements in place relative to training, and all of that's taking place within our schools. And we use a virtual platform to do most of this work. It's called Mobile Minds. I believe you may be going to speak to that. Are you speaking to that?
I'm not, but I
Okay, so,
can.
yeah, most of the training is done that way. Some of it is done in person as well, but a lot of these are wound up in policy. But we enact those just through those different trainings. And then Tom pointed that next slide out with additional trainings that are things that aren't required by the state, but are things that we do just to try to add breadth to the preparation that we would have in school should something take place.
I think it's important to point out too, the role of Brenda Seal, who's our lead nurse, tackles a lot of this stuff and make sure all of our, for example, all our AEDs are ready to go. And all the trainings. So that's the inside slide. So post-assessment procedure updates, it's on everybody's badge in the district.
Let me go back to one slide.
Yes, sir.
Before you go to that emergency action plan. That has been in place, I believe, for 3 years now. And we did a reassessment this summer, we being our partners with DOL Solutions, and they're here with us tonight. Clay Sanchez and David Palmer started working with us 3 years ago and have just been outstanding partners. And they've got great experience in this world in a different realm. And so when you bring their expertise with the release expertise, you get a really strong unified effort. And so they looked at all of our plans again this summer, looked at a couple of our campuses that were not part of the original planning, one being the annex above us here, and make recommendations on particular things that we need to do. But this action plan that you see here, Tom referenced, every employee has it, and every classroom has it, and it goes through lockdown procedures and how you secure the perimeters, the evacuation, shelter in place, things, et cetera. So this is a critical piece of just the communication part of it as well. So I appreciate the work this summer, the group coming back, because this is always evolving, as you know. And so having that different lens is important. And to that point, Tom, you can slide ahead one, is that we have a set of priorities from our team with DOL, Clay and David, about facility improvements we need to make. And we are going to begin to move forward with as many recommendations as we can with the dollars that we have from a 2020 bond issue. And we have allocated funds for particular projects related to security improvements. They outlined, again, those for us on each of our campuses. So over the course of the year, we'll be developing. Some of those we'll be implementing, and a good number, I would say, would happen next summer. But that's work and outflow really of the product that Clay and David put together for us. Anything you guys want to add on that one?
No. Hey everyone, I'm David Palmer, it's Clay Sanchez, DOL Solutions. We've worked with you guys for about 4 years now. Made some pretty great changes throughout Vestavia, worked with all the principals and staff. So I'm from Vestavia, my wife's a teacher, I work with Dr. Richardson, I've got 2 kids in elementary school here in Vestavia as well, so I'm obviously very invested in this. Clay's local as well, he lives in Birmingham, but he's a smart one, so I drag him along everywhere. But yeah, just that V out there was a huge piece that we put together. We worked with Dr. Martin and Dr. Freeman on put together, and it just makes a huge difference in how prepared we are for emergencies. To be able to have that clear and concise guidance to teachers and maybe some of our older students, we're super happy to get that out there. And as well as all the other changes we've helped implement here, we're happy about those. Look forward to working with Jennifer this year on some additional things for threat assessments on the behavioral side of the house as well, so that we can continue to get out in front of things potentially. Yeah, and we'll be here if you guys have any questions for us. Appreciate you inviting us, Dr. Freeman.
Thank you, I appreciate it very much. And I think you made your next one, I think.
The latest assessment that they did was for PZITs, because that wasn't part of the original plan. We didn't have hadn't moved in there yet, so that was taking place very recently.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. So speaking of, I work a great deal in prevention. I work with our school counselors, and we do a lot of work with our core values. And the purpose of that is just to prepare our students to prevent before we have to intervene. But we do sometimes have to look at threat assessments, and we do have those in the schools. And I worked closely with David recently and made some great adjustments and updates to our threat assessment protocol. Showed it to the principals last week, and they had some great feedback. They really loved David he implemented like a flow chart. Like, if this happens, then you do this. If this, then that. Of course, it's all backed up by Secret Service. I worked with the police department, school resource officers, and national organizations. So it's informed by all of those organizations, and then with the expert eye of these guys. And so I appreciate very much that partnership. We feel far more confident going in just with an added tool this year. And I can answer any questions that you guys might have about that. But we did review it, and it was really an ongoing process this year. Just as we learned, we updated that process. It is comprehensive in nature. It is not specifically about the behavior. Yes, we do look at the behavior of the student, but we also look at risk factors that they have, and more importantly, perhaps, are supportive factors. What can we do to support this student? It's not necessarily all discipline focused. If there's a discipline component related to the code of conduct, of course, we follow those procedures, but we don't follow them without an additional layer of student support. So I think that's really important. That's another prevention tool.
And as you can imagine, students who struggle or who we might see in a threat situation almost always have something additional going on. Yeah, there are 4 steps now. We added a screener, which really is geared towards the reactive type threats. You know, you won't let me play on the playground, and so I say something terrible to you. And we are able to look at that and screen that. And so principals work with a team. They're not on their own. They work with the school resource officer and the counselor. So we think about it in those 3 areas initially in that screening. And then if it is a significant threat, we move to a school level team. And so that team might be a little bit broader. We might bring in a teacher who knows that student a little bit better, can give additional information. And then if it is a real credible threat or something that the school leadership is unable to really rectify or resolve, then they move it to a district level. And at that point, it would involve Mr. Callahan, the SRO over all of the SROs in the district. It would involve me and anyone else who we felt like would bring information and some knowledge to the table about that. So that process has been refined, and we feel, I'll speak on behalf of the administrative team, we feel better about it this year than we ever have. It feels very strong. Those are never situations that are fun to walk through. We're working really hard to be sure our folks are trained, that our teachers have a little bit more information about it so that they, it's not something that's mysterious, that they know the steps that we're taking in a situation like that. And we also want to provide additional information to our parents so that they know we have a process. It's been informed by the local police department, by the FBI, by the Secret Service, and by these guys who are local experts, and this is what they do all day, every day. So we're excited about that. Do you guys have any questions about that?
How quick would the assessment take place, and would the community get any information from that assessment, or is that on the back burner until everything's complete?
The focus immediately is what is the threat, and if it is one, then containing it and making sure all of our students are safe. So really, and you all jump in at any point, it's an immediate assessment. We look at that, we bring in an administrator would bring in the counselor and the SRO, immediately talk about the incident, gather all the facts, student statements, adult statements, and that sort of thing before moving to the next level. So it's very immediate. And at some point, if it were certainly a school level or a district level threat, there would be a determination along with Dr. Freeman, Dr. Rainey, about communicating to the community the proper way to do that and to give them the information that they needed to know their students are safe.
And how quick it gets blasted on social media?
We're not that fast because we're gathering facts.
Yeah.
We're gathering facts. It's a great question though, yeah. Anything else? Okay. Go to my next one. And we are working really hard this year to make the tip line that we have more visible. We've had it for several years. Our kiddos are informed about it in their schools. And in fact, it's funny to watch how the numbers go up when the middle schoolers learn about it or they're reminded of it. The numbers skyrocket, and it could be very important reports about bullying that we immediately address, or it could just sound like siblings going around and around. But I'm glad that they use it, that they're aware that it's easy to use. People can remain anonymous, and which is great because a lot of students, especially at upper levels, do not want the social impact of reporting something like that. At the same time, it's hard to investigate something if you have very little information. So, if it's an anonymous tip, we need as much information as possible in order to investigate it. If not, we'll just keep asking for it and following up with whoever reported it. But there's a mobile app that we have, of course, in the district, and you can access it there. You can call or text. There are links on each individual school's website to report, and then a button on the main district website where you can report. And they go directly to school administrators, to district administrators, and we look at those immediately. We are also looking at a way to see if we can have an icon placed on student Chromebooks during an update where they can access it that way also. But again, we had worked on a flyer. He and I worked together just to make it more visible in our schools. We created a QR code where students, if they have their phone, they can scan that QR code and report a tip if necessary. And of course, we want our parents to know about it. So those are ways that we are addressing safety concerns because, of course, first and foremost is student safety. If they're not safe, they can't access the incredible instruction our teachers are providing, and we want them to be able to do that so they can learn at those high levels.
It's been anonymity. There's been some questions in the past about how that's insured, but it's going through a software provider so that if you're sending that in, it's not like it comes from a cell number that can be traced. It's going through the software where that's the level that protects the anonymity of the report.
That's exactly right. And Wick could speak to that more thoroughly because he's far more informed on that component than I am. But it comes in anonymous. There's not, to my understanding, any IP address. There's certainly not a phone number unless someone enters their phone number and they want a response or something like that. So yeah, there's not a way to trace that. So it truly is anonymous. I know a lot of folks don't think anything is anonymous, but as far as I can
When we
understand
get them,
that
they come in like on this form.
Mhm.
So we only see what the person who wanted to give us the tip gives us the permission to see.
And there's even a way to respond to reporter. Still have no idea who that is, you know. Great question. Any others about student safety? Okay.
We have a really, really strong team that makes this a priority. I hope you know that, and our principals just are fantastic about implementing in the day-to-day, because truly it is the most important work we do. So I appreciate all the components of making all this work.
Dr. Chairman, did you want us to play this video or the one that we had created?
Oh, it's on the tip line?
Mhm.
I think we will.
Okay, all right.
I appreciate it. I had that queued up for Whip since he left. It won't show up. But it's gonna send this out to parents and then do a video, just notifying them how the tip line works. And then just one more way of getting that information out there. So, all right, that's it.
All right, so the next thing is public comment, if anyone is here tonight from the community that would like to share. You already spoke, so I guess. Anyone? All right, if there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned.
It's a long time.